Tell you what, dipshit. You don't like my policies, you can just come on down here and smooch my big old white butt. Pucker up, buttercup.
Russia sent troops into Ukraine on February 24th, citing Kiev's failure to implement the Minsk agreements, designed to give the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk special status within the Ukrainian state. The protocols, brokered by Germany and France, were first signed in 2014. Former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko has since admitted that Kiev's main goal was to use the ceasefire to buy time and, quote, create powerful armed forces, unquote. In February 2022, the Kremlin recognized the Donbas republics as independent states and demanded that Ukraine officially declare itself a neutral country that will never join any Western military bloc. Kiev insists the Russian offensive was completely unprovoked. Yep, just like Kiev insists it's the Russians that are shelling the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The same Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant that Russia has had control of and troops stationed at since March. In this video, I'm going to be looking at the Ukrainian casualties. I know that the Russian casualties probably aren't accurate either, but I want to focus on the truth about the Ukrainian war casualties because I believe that there is a massive, let's call it a psychological operation, revolving around the Ukrainian casualties. Now, before I get it, actually, you know what? Yeah, let's look at the Ukrainian casualties. So when you Google how many Ukrainian troops have died, you'll get this Wikipedia article, which we're going to be looking at. And then you get this. You find people also ask, how many soldiers have Ukrainian lost? And you find this NPR article. And this is after 6 months. This article came out in August 24th, 2022. Or came out on August 24th, 2022. And it claims that Ukraine has only lost 9,000 military personnel. Now, when I saw this, I was like, wow, that can't be right. Now, I forgot to mention the thing that caused me to want to look into this. The reason why I even began to look into this, I mean, I was already very aware that there was a lot of deception in these numbers, but what made me really want to look into it is I was reading a Russian report that had claimed that Ukraine had lost 52,000 troops since July 11th alone. And I was like, wow, those are massive numbers. And I actually originally set out to confirm or to disprove those numbers. You see, I don't just listen and believe, no matter who's saying it. I tend to investigate and research things for myself. So I started to look into this, and when I started to look into the Ukrainian troop casualty numbers, I realized that there was a massive psychological operation going on. So, once again, here NPR is claiming, actually, you know what, we're going to see this in the Wikipedia article anyway. Let's look at the Wikipedia article. So the Wikipedia article begins with the troops or the personnel that were dying before the 2022 invasion. That's what they call it, the invasion, right? The war in Donbas, which started on April 6, 2014, and an estimated of like 14,000 people have died. Okay, so this is actually what made Russia want to do this invasion. Let me show you on a map what actually happened for those of you who have been living under a rock. So, in 2014, Crimea had a referendum, and they decided that they were going to be leaving Ukraine. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, before this referendum, Crimea, which is down here, my marker's over it, Crimea was an autonomous region. It wasn't like 100% part of Ukraine. It was an autonomous region of Ukraine. So they decided to have a referendum and leave Ukraine. And they decided to have this referendum after the United States government the United States government funded a coup in Ukraine, and they overthrew the government of Ukraine, and they implemented a government in Ukraine that was basically anti-Russian. So Crimea was like, you know what, we don't want any part of this new government, of this new regime. We're going to completely separate from Ukraine. And then after they separated from Ukraine, they decided to go to Russia. Russia was like, you know what? Yeah, we'll annex you guys. You guys can come over here. Now, this is the beginning of the deception, because according to Western media outlets, according to mainstream media outlets in the West, Russia just came in and took Crimea. Like, according to their narrative, Russia just came here and took Crimea. They just annexed Crimea, and they were like, Crimea is ours. That's not at all what happened. There was a referendum, a democratic referendum, with something like a 90% turnout. So it wasn't like just a small amount of people turned out for this referendum. Pretty much everyone that could vote turned out for this referendum, and something like 92% of the population that voted to leave Ukraine. Okay, so this isn't Russia coming in and stealing Crimea away from Ukraine undemocratically. This was a democratic referendum. So after Crimea had this referendum and decided to separate from Ukraine, these other regions in Ukraine, the Donbass region, decided to do the same thing. This is Donetsk, this is Luhansk. These cities decided to do the same thing. They said, you know what? We're also going to have a referendum, and we're also going to leave. At which point, because these regions, they weren't autonomous like Crimea, at this point, Ukraine, having already lost Crimea, was like, no, we're not going to let you guys leave. Your referendum is illegal. And the Kiev regime declared their referendum unconstitutional. They said, no, it's unconstitutional. You guys can't have this referendum. And what's hilarious, and Putin has even pointed this out, the United Nations recognizes the right of people to choose their destiny. They recognize the right of people to choose or to declare their independence from their government. So although the UN recognizes this right, they don't want to recognize this right for this region. When it comes to this region, they're like, no, that's not the organic desire of that region. That's Russian propaganda. And they try to make it as if it's all Russian propaganda and as if it's Russia trying to steal these places away from Ukraine. So when that happened in 2014, Ukraine actually started to bomb these regions. They actually went in there with military and they started to kill people. And that's why when you look at the casualty chart, you find that 14,000 people have died in this region even before Russia came in February of 2022. Okay, so that's really important information to know. Now let's look at the casualties of the current conflict to see the big lie, okay? And to figure out why they're lying. Got foreign fighters. Okay, 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. Let's just look at these numbers and how they don't make any sense whatsoever. Okay, so this is the civilian casualties. Okay, this is according to Ukrainian government. 7,000 to 28,521 killed. This is between February and September. This is a huge estimate, okay? And I think I know why they have this estimate, and I'll be going into that later on. So this is according to the United Nations. United Nations from February to September, 5,718 killed and 8,200 wounded. So these numbers are way the hell off. And you have to ask yourselves, why does the United Nations numbers, why are they so off from the Ukrainian government's numbers? Now I'm going to state right now a theory that I have. I think that the reason why Ukraine's numbers are so out of whack is because Ukraine is counting troop casualties as civilian casualties. You see, Ukrainian had this massive draft. They're basically taking like every civilian of fighting age and making them fight. And we saw this even early on in the conflict, where they were encouraging civilians who have no military experience whatsoever to arm themselves with Molotov cocktails and to throw Molotov cocktails at guys who have machine guns and tanks. I mean, this was ridiculous. So I think what the Ukrainian government is doing here is they're trying to count some of their troops, or count some of the casualties of their troops, as civilian casualties. And we're going to see that play out here, okay? So Ukrainian forces, this is according to the Ukrainian government. Now check this shit out. This is from February to just June, okay? They claim 10,000 killed, 30,000 wounded, 7,200 missing, 5,600 captured. I don't know if this captured is out of this missing, but whatever. You know, so What's interesting, though, is here, this is already higher than the number that NPR gave us in August. So NPR is all like, oh yeah, the 6 months, only 9,000 military personnel died. But yet we have sourced, and this is all sourced, the Ukrainian government was claiming in June that 10,000 were killed and 30,000 were wounded. Now, let's go on. So then, this is Ukrainian government, and then Ukrainian government, look at this, they changed the numbers from February to August. Oh, only 9,000 killed now. It's like, did you guys revive a full 1,000 people? This is clearly a lie. Now let's look at the numbers that they give to Russia, right? This is the U.S. and UK and Estonia estimates, right? This is from February to July. 15,000 killed, 45,000 wounded. Now here's the U.S. estimates, right? This is the U.S. estimates alone, right? So from February to August, they claim 70 to 80,000 killed and wounded. Here they put the killed and wounded in the same category. I don't really understand why. I guess I understand why. I guess some of these soldiers are sustaining wounds that are completely taking them out of battle. So they might as well be deemed killed. They're no longer capable of being in active resistance. So you know what? I'll get on board with this, putting the killed and wounded in the same chart. But at the same time, some people can be wounded that could have an eye wound and, be able to still fight. But whatever. Then the Ukrainian government claims that Russia has lost 52,650. Now, what's interesting... I got rid of the article, the Russian article, that was claiming that 52,000 Ukrainian forces had died since just July. So I find this number interesting because it's very close to the numbers that Russia gave for Ukrainian losses since just July 11th. Okay? But anyway, this is what the Russian is claiming their losses. Okay? Russia is claiming, this is according to BBC News Russia, and this other Russian, a Russian independent media outlet. So this is not a Russian state media outlet. So according to these two outlets, from February to September, there was a minimum of 6,000, let's round it 6,500 killed or confirmed deaths by name. And they actually got these people's names. So they claim, let's say 7,000 dead Russians, okay? And then according to Important Stories, which is another independent Russian website specializing in investigative journalism, according to this website, there's been about, let's say 5,800, okay, confirmed by name. And then this is the Russian forces. And this is also something that's very interesting because, once again, Russia is not at war, at total war. So these are the Russian forces. The people who are doing a lot of the fighting are actually the Donetsk People's Republic forces and the Luhansk People's Republic forces. And we see that here. If you look here, Russian and Allied forces, they have them all grouped into one category here. This right here, the DPR and LPR, that's the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic. Okay, so here, according to the Donetsk People's Republic, they've lost 3,000. Let's just say 3,100 troops, and about 13,000 were wounded. And then, according to the Russian government, the Luhansk People's Republic forces have lost. They stopped reporting in April. So, of course, these numbers coming from Russia and these other sources, they can't be trusted either. But we're going to be focusing on the Ukrainian troop numbers in this video because I want to talk about a psychological operation that I believe is happening around the Ukrainian troop loss. So let's read a little bit of this, because this is going to be really important for us to figure out the numbers ourselves. Meanwhile, at the height of the fighting in May and June 2022, according to President Zelensky, or Ukrainian President Zelensky, and presidential advisor Mikhailo, between 100 and 200 Ukrainian soldiers were being killed in combat daily, while presidential advisor, this guy, stated 150 soldiers were being killed and 800 wounded daily. Mid-June, this guy, Ukrainian chief negotiator with Russia, told Axios that between 200 and 500 Ukrainian soldiers were being killed every day. By late July, Ukrainian losses fell to around 30 killed and about 250 wounded. Okay, let's stop right there. Okay, so according to Zelensky, in these 2 months, and they claim that this was the height of the fighting. I don't really know if that's true. This was more around the time that Russia was retreating from Kiev. And I've made videos already before saying that that was a strategic retreat. But whatever, according to Zelensky, this was the height of their fighting. So according to him and his advisors, let's say 150 troops were being killed. Okay, let's get the number in the middle, because they said between 100 and 200, and then this other advisor stated that 150 soldiers were being killed and 800 wounded daily. Okay, so let's go with these numbers. And you know what? Since they put the casualties and the wounded together with Russia, we're going to do the same thing, at least with these numbers. So let's add 950, because 800 plus 150, okay? Let's do 950. I know these are just general numbers. They're not going to give us exact numbers. So 950 times 30. Let's say there's 30 months in May. Okay, so just May alone, 28,500 losses. I'm not saying killed. I'm saying losses, because when they're injured, they're probably a lost troop. They can probably no longer continue fighting. That's in 1 month. Let's times that number by 2. Okay, so in just 2 months, we have 57,000 either dead or injured. Let's look at the dead now, using these numbers from the negotiator. He said between 200 and 500 Ukrainian troops were killed every day. Now, this is at the height of the fighting, okay? So that's why I'm only going to be accounting for 2 months, okay? And then we can extrapolate those numbers however we want to, okay? So let's get a number in between 200 and 500. You know what? Let's be nice. Let's be very conservative. And let's say only 300 are dying every day for 2 months. 300 times 30, that's 9,000. Times 2, because it's 2 months of fighting, that's 18,000 deaths in just 2 months. Okay, so using these numbers, we have 18,000 deaths, and this is using the numbers that they gave for the height of their fighting. 18,000 deaths, but according to the other numbers that we used already, using these already, we have over 57,000 in 2 months being taken out of commission, okay? So the rest of this is not necessary. What I want to look at now is the news articles of kind of confirming this. You know, there have been a whole bunch of news articles talking about the 100 to 200 number, and then Zelensky, this is the third, actually, let's look at the 30 soldiers were dying. And really, to understand why these numbers are fluctuating like this, you have to be really familiar with the battle that's been going on the ground and the movement of the troops. But anyway, in the last couple of weeks, Ukraine has had this counteroffensive, okay? And this is why Russia claims that since July 11th alone, Ukraine has lost 52,000 troops, okay? And it has to do with this counteroffensive. So let's look at these counteroffensives. So there are actually 2 counteroffensives. And the counteroffensive actually began in the south around Kherson. So Ukraine started this counteroffensive in the south, and they had this massive counteroffensive in the south around Kherson. This is where they're shelling the Zaporizhzhia power plant. The Zaporizhzhia region's like right around here. So they had this counteroffensive around Kherson. Now this counteroffensive, they got their asses handed to them, and we're going to be looking at that in a second. And then what their plan was to have this counteroffensive in the south and then surprise the Russians in the north. So they had this counteroffensive. It started here, and then when they felt like they pulled enough troops out of the north, they then had this massive counteroffensive in the north, which they claim took all of this land. So this was 6th September. This was 12th September, and you can see Ukraine took all of this land, and Ukraine is so happy. They're like on the Russian border now. Okay, this is Russia over here. this gray area. So they're so happy they pushed the Russian troops back here. Problem is that according to Russia, they intentionally did a strategic retreat out of here. And this was a strategic retreat. Actually, you know what? Before we even look at that, let's look at the Washington Post reporting on the Kherson offensive. This was an article by the Washington Post. Here you can see the Washington Post about the Ukrainian soldiers talking about the Kherson offensive. Now, instead of looking at this Washington Post article because it's like really unnecessarily long, like it's all of this nonsense, I'm going to read the brief RT article on it. Yeah, I'll read the RT article. Fuck it. It's a pretty short article. I'm going to read the whole thing. So, a Washington Post report on the counteroffensive attempt comes ahead of a weapons suppliers meeting in Germany. As Kiev has banned journalists from the front line of the offensive in Kherson region, the Washington Post sent a reporter to a hospital in the rear area, where wounded Ukrainian soldiers told a harrowing tale of fighting against the odds. Wednesday's piece about plucky underdogs who just need more weapons, ammunition, and equipment appeared just ahead of a U.S.-led meeting of Ukrainian arms suppliers in Ramstein, Germany. Soldiers with, quote, severed limbs, shrapnel wounds, mangled hands, and shattered joints told the Post, and this quote here, this is actually quoted from the Washington Post article, told the Post about the lopsided disadvantages. All the quotes, by the way, all the quotes are coming from the Washington Post article. The Ukrainian army faces on the Kherson front. The Russians have more and better artillery, drones that can fly with impunity a kilometer high, and counter-battery radars that can call fire on Ukrainian heads within minutes, according to the U.S. outlet. Russian troops even hack and hijack Ukrainian drones, which drift away helplessly behind enemy lines, the paper said. We lost 5 people for every one they did, Igor, a 30-year-old platoon leader with a back injury, told the Post. Very revealing. We lost 5 people for every one they did, at least in this counteroffensive in the south. When we turn on mobile phones or radio, they can recognize our presence immediately, another soldier named Dennis said, and then the shooting starts. They were just hitting us all the time, said this guy who had lost an arm in the fighting. If we fire 3 mortars, they fire 20 in return. Okay, so they're getting their asses kicked. Okay, this is the only point that I'm trying to read this article about. Okay, they're getting their asses handed to them. And what's interesting is that even though the Washington Post, which is a reputable news publisher in America and in the West, even though they published this, virtually nobody reported on this. Nobody reported on this terrible counteroffensive. And all they're doing is they're reporting on the northern offensive, but they're not talking about the amount of troops that are being lost. They're not reporting, oh yeah, we killed all these Russian troops up here. No, they're not reporting on that because they're actually not killing a lot of Russian troops up here. And what really happened up here is they fell into the Russian trap. You see, Russia had this area for quite some time. And what Russia was doing up here was clearing the area out. You see, I watch a lot of raw videos that come out of this war. And I see what's really going on in the battlefield, or at least what is shown in these videos. And I can tell you that Ukraine, actually, you know what? Let me see if I can pull up a video. I'll pull up a video. Actually, I have a video here. This is an interesting video. And actually, you know what? I'm going to say something before I even play this video. I watch a lot of different websites, not just news websites, but video uploading websites that are completely uncensored. And they upload a lot of war footage. And I noticed that over the months, a couple of these websites went from having Russian videos to not having any Russian videos at all. Like earlier on, you would have some Russian videos, some Ukrainian videos. You would have a nice balance of the two. However, within the last couple of months, these websites, which used to also have some Russian videos, or at least some Russian war footage videos, have absolutely zero Russian war videos coming out. None whatsoever. And they have a ton of Ukrainian propaganda videos. And they're very obviously propaganda videos by the way that they're edited. And I began to ask myself, hey, Why is this the case? And then finally, I found another website which allowed, and this is an American website, which allowed some Russian videos to be uploaded. And I came across this video. Actually, shit, I should have mentioned this. This guy that the Washington Post interviews, he admits that he has no military experience. Where is it here? Involved Operation Wednesday, made an offensive action. Okay, Kiev has banned journalists from the front, according to the Post. 5 kilometers. Whatever. Okay, I guess it was actually in the full Post article. If you read this full Post article, you will find that this guy who they were interviewing, he has no military experience. And he admits that the person that replaced him also has no military experience. Now, I'm going to show proof that these Ukrainian soldiers have no military experience. Here is a video of 2 Ukrainian armored personnel carriers demonstrating their total lack of military experience. Now, before I even play this video, I'm going to say that videos that I've seen of Ukrainian soldiers in the trenches, especially at least recent videos, show that they have zero military experience. I've seen armored personnel carriers dropping Ukrainian troops off like near some of these trenches that they're using for cover, and these soldiers spent the entire time hiding and cowering in these trenches, not even trying to put up a fight. And you can tell that they have zero military experience. But let's look at this video to see the complete lack of military experience presented here. These are Ukrainian armored personnel carrier running over Ukrainian troops. I'll have to censor this in the post-production, but where the red circles are where Ukrainian troops had fallen off the tops of these armored personnel carriers, and then they got totally ran over. And you can see they're just running away from the battle, and this is further down the line, the armored personnel carrier actually tips over. And this shows, you can see the way that this tank over here is jerking about, like the way that they're moving, you can tell that they're not very familiar. I mean, these people probably, not even do they not have military experience, these people probably don't even have driver's licenses. The way that they're operating these vehicles, it looks like they don't even know how to drive. You can see the jerky movement in the video. It shows that they're either in an extreme panic, like they're not very good in an emergency situation. And this is an important part of military training. When you go through military training, they're supposed to train you to keep a level head in very stressful situations. So you can tell that these people, by the way that they act in very stressed situations, that they have virtually zero military experience. And this video itself proves that. And I think that this is why a lot of these websites have banned Russian videos from being posted and are only posting Ukrainian propaganda videos because they don't want this fact to be revealed. Now you have to ask yourself, why don't they want these facts to be revealed? Because it's a giant depopulation program. It's a giant, actually not a depopulation, it's a controlling population program. They want, and maybe not even just a program for controlling the population, maybe it's just a giant weapons program and they're just trying to get weapons. But in my opinion, they want people to go here and die. They want to kill off all these Ukrainians. They want all these Ukrainians to think that it's an easy victory, that, oh, you know what, it's fine if I have no military experience. We're kicking these Russians' asses, and we're going to go there and we're going to be victorious no matter what, because we're Ukrainians and they're Russians. And there's just this complete skewed perception of reality going on over there, which is driving all of these people to go over there and get killed. And, you know, I have different theories as to why this happens. I think it might have to do with an independent philosophy that might exist in this region. I looked at the greatest anarchist shill a couple videos ago for a reason, and it's because that anarchist shill was being a shill in this region, and he actually got a lot of people killed in this region, and it shows a lot of the history of this region, a lot of this independent-mindedness. And I believe that they're trying to kill off as much of this independent-mindedness as possible. And I know people are like, oh, well, these independent-minded people over here are Nazis. I'm aware of that. I'm aware that they have a pretty fucked up ideology in some of these places. But if anything, that shows the sort of independent-mindedness that exists in this region. Now, I'm no supporter of Nazis, okay? Fuck Nazis, fuck National Socialist, fuck anybody who views the world in any sort of generalized manner. Racist, all of these people, fuck all of them, okay? But it says a lot that in a world that hates Nazis, in a world filled with anti-Nazi messaging, these people still chose to remain Nazis. Okay, to me, these people are a roadblock or a potential roadblock in the New World Order. And I think what's really going on over here is they're all getting killed intentionally. And it's true on both sides. I think that Putin is in on this. I think Zelensky is in on this. I think that over here it's just a killing machine. It's just a meat grinder. And the Ukrainian government, I think they want it to be a meat grinder. And I think, all the messaging in the West, they're trying to get patriots and people that will stand for what's right to come into this meat grinder. Now, of course, there's other things. I know money's involved. I know all of these other things are involved. But that's just an opinion. It's a perspective that I have that I would like to share. And that was the point of this video. So now that I've made this point, I'm going to end this video here. Keep your mind sharp and keep your eyes open.
Do you really long for chaos and disharmony?